The Rings of Fate Scene 11. From this moment on you will act like a baby girl. Susie here will be responsible for ensuring that on your every waking moment you will be a perfect baby, gooing and garring happily when you play with your toys. She has my permission to spank you for any display other than that of a baby's. She continued, no one but us will know that my sweet pretty little baby girl is really my grown-up son living his fantasy of becoming a real baby girl. Will we tell Dad? Susie asked, now amazingly recovered from her upset. Goodness no, Susie. And he must never know, not that he can turn him back into a boy now that the rings are to be locked in a vault. Only you and I know that little baby Susie is really a grown boy, and that is how it must stay, Mother told her. I will still insist on everyone treating him like an infant. He will be kept to your old routine in every aspect. We must ensure that he is always turned out so prettily dressed that no one will ever suspect he isn't a baby girl. Fine by me, Mum, Susie giggled, in my old voice. But what about David? He is sure to try to tell someone who he really is. He did before. Mother looked down at me. You do know that there is no way back to being a boy, don't you, David, and that you are going to have to play the part of a perfect baby or be punished, don't you? She asked. I nodded, sucking heavily on my dummy. Then let me give you this warning, David. If I ever suspect that you try to inform anyone that you are not the baby girl you look like and are going to act like, then I will have you adopted, she stated. I was shocked. That is the threat you made to Susie to keep her acting like a baby. But where your threat was an empty lie that would never have come true, mine isn't. So it is your choice. You either act like the baby you now are or you face life as baby looked after by total strangers. Do you understand? I nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks. And don't think your father will stop me. In fact, he suggested we look into the possibility of putting you up for adoption, Mother continued, and again this has been your own fault. Your behavior yesterday caused him to think we couldn't cope with a fractious permanent infant anymore. So all I have to tell him is that you continue to have your baby tantrums and off you go. I burst into baby wails. Always the ickle baby waby crying then, Susie cooed, taking me from Mother's arms. It's your own fault, David. But don't worry, we are going to take real good care of you, baby. Mother smiled, pinching my cheek viciously. You will soon be crawling about your playpen playing happily with your baby toys, ha ha ha. Poor David trapped in that baby's body, and now you have to act the part too. Don't worry, David, Mother and I will put you into the frilliest baby clothes to help you. Remember to cry a lot too. I used to. If you don't, a good smack on you baby bottom will help, I'm sure. Susie laughed, patting my bottom. Aren't you glad you used those rings now, David? You wanted to know what it was like to be a baby. Mother and I are going to make sure you find out. Susie turned to Mother. I think I should take Babykins out for a walk, Mother. I am meeting Leslie at the cafe soon. Baby can come with me. Mother realized how humiliating this would be for me. Great idea, she laughed, holding up a set of baby reins. Here you are, I will get baby's stroller ready. She left me squirming in Susie's arms. She had a look of absolute triumph on her face. A short while later we were heading for the cafe. I was firmly strapped in my stroller, my rein bells jingling to announce any movement I made. In my arms was a talking baby doll. It had been Susie's favorite. When it was poked in the tummy it spoke. Under threat of adoption, I had been instructed to make my dolly talk as frequently as possible, giggling with baby happiness. Oh, what a wonderful day for a walk, I heard Susie say behind me. My reins prevented me from turning to see her. I could only look forward, the ribbons from my bonnet tickling my neck annoyingly, the summer breeze picking at my dress skirt and petticoat, giving extra views of my frilly napped condition. I am a pretty baby girl, the doll squeaked. Gagagoo, I gurgled, feigning happiness. It's great to be out walking in the fresh air, don't you think, baby? Susie continued. Oh silly me, I forgot you cannot walk and you can only toddle, ha ha ha. Baby needs changing. Gagagoo. Before us loomed the cafe. For the last few years this had been the center of my social world. All my friends gathered here. This is where I had met Leslie. Only a few days ago I would have been happy to be coming here, But then I was a grown boy, then I would have been joining in the conversations, then I would have been flirting with the girls, then I would have been doing what boys of 16 do, and that is to grow into men. I want to cuddle mommy. Gagagoo. Instead here I was in a baby stroller, wearing nappies and baby clothes, unable to talk. Here I was playing with a doll and gurgling happily after it spoke. Here I was a baby girl, unable to grow, doomed to the life of an infant with no hope of escape. I want my dum-dum. Gagagoo. David, I heard Leslie's voice call from behind. I strained trying to turn to see her, my reins prevented it with a merry jingle. Hi Les, Susie greeted her and I heard them kiss. Leslie appeared before me, smiling. Hi there baby doll, don't you look pretty today, she gushed. Gagagoo, I gurgled, offering her the doll as I had been instructed by Susie. Leslie laughed that infectious laugh that had caused me to fall in love with her. No silly, she is your dolly, she said, pushing the doll back into my arms, inadvertently making it speak. Dress me pretty. Gagagoo, I gurgled on cue, noticing that Susie was now watching me like a hawk. Well, it seems Susie is a lot better, Leslie remarked, Susie's arm wrapping around her slim waist. Yes, Leslie smiled. She seems like a different baby. Leslie kissed Susie, I noticed their tongues entering each other's mouths. Intense jealousy raged through my tiny body. What would you do if I accidentally swapped minds with Susie? Susie asked a breathless Leslie after their smooching session. Don't be stupid, David, how could you swap minds with a baby, Leslie mocked. Humor me, Les, David continued to stare down at me. If it were possible that I could swap minds with Susie, and if we did and she was able to talk and act like me, and I could only gurgle baby talk, what would you do? You mean like in those stories on your computer, Dave? Leslie grinned. I felt my eyes widen, Leslie knew about my secret files. Susie blushed too, she knew the implications of being associated with those files now she was in my body. Yes, Susie admitted. Leslie pondered. She mused. Well, let's say that you did switch minds. And that once you did, Susie was able to take your place as a boy, I mean she wasn't still a baby in a boy's body. And she could talk and do all the things that you do. Yes, exactly that, Susie encouraged her. I watched Leslie's hand slip into Susie's pants. Is this turning you on? She giggled. Susie nodded. Well, what would you do? You wouldn't have a baby's mind, she asked. No. Fee would keep all my faculties, except I couldn't talk. I would take great pleasure in making you wear the frilliest of baby clothes and making act just like a real baby, David, she laughed. Susie kissed her deeply, I squirmed in my stroller. Let's say that I had some magic rings that I used to swap our minds, just for a few minutes to see what it would be like to be a baby, Susie continued. But you found us, and you saw that one of the rings had slipped from Susie's finger, what would you do? I knew that Susie was leading up to telling her who she really was and who was actually in Susie's baby body. Susie could see my expression, she took the opportunity to push my dummy into my trembling lips. That would mean I had the power to keep you like that, Leslie grinned. Susie nodded. What would you do if I kept you like that, David? She whispered loudly in his ear. You wouldn't, Susie scoffed. Oh yes I would, Leslie giggled. And I would tease you remorselessly for the rest of your baby life. I felt the stroller lurch forward. Let's not go to the cafe just yet, Les, David said from behind. I have a confession to make. Once Susie had pushed me and led Leslie into a quiet place, she stopped the stroller and turned it around so I could see them both. What's wrong, David? Leslie asked, concerned. You know that Dad is an archaeologist, don't you? Leslie nodded. And you know he has access to special artifacts. Again she nodded as Susie gave her an account of what happened yesterday. Leslie stood astounded, her eyes wide in shock, at first unable to speak. So you see, Leslie, I am Susie, that is David sat in the stroller, Susie confessed. I can't believe it. Leslie shook her head, looking down at me, her brow furrowed. Things like that only happen in horror stories. I can prove it, Susie told her. You know the real Susie cannot understand anything you say, don't you? Yes, I have been trying to teach her to speak since I have been dating you, Leslie replied. Ask her who she really is, Susie challenged. Leslie bent down closer.